Hey everyone, it's Alexander, the real Mr. Robinson. Welcome to the channel. This is my review for Season 1 of Loki, which is the third Disney Plus series set in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and once again brings back Tom Hiddleston as the God of Mischief, Loki. So if you recall back to Avengers Endgame, when the Avengers traveled through time to try to grab the Infinity Stones, they went back to the Battle of New York in 2012. Unfortunately, both Tony Stark and Scott Lang screwed up big time with the Tesseract, so Loki was able to grab it and escape. So what exactly happened after Loki escaped New York with the Tesseract? Well, he didn't get very far. He got intercepted by the TVA, also known as the Time Variance Authority, and they're an organization tasked with protecting the sacred timeline, making sure everything goes according to plan and that there are no branches in the timeline. To put it in Back to the Future terms, it's their job to make sure that no Biff Tannens alter the time to benefit themselves. If you remember Back to the Future 2, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, what about the Avengers going through time to try to grab the Infinity Stones? Well, they simply say that they were meant to do that. Now, before I continue with the plot, I briefly have to say that when they gave an explanation of why the TVA has no problem with the Avengers going through time, I was like, that's a bit of a stretch, but I'll give it a pass, and it's only the first episode, so we'll see what happens. So Loki has a choice to either be sent back to 2012 and be taken to Asgard to stand trial, or be pruned and basically killed. But he's approached by an agent of the TVA, Morbius, played by Owen Wilson. Oh wow! And they're having a problem with another Loki variant who is causing mischief throughout the sacred timeline. So throughout this journey, Loki eventually encounters the other variant of himself, who is a woman named Sylvia. The two of them join forces and try to get to the bottom of the TVA and find out what exactly is going on with it, and who's controlling the entire organization. So I do apologize that this review is coming in late, but with What If premiering in a couple days, now seemed like the perfect time. And I also do apologize if you were disappointed that I didn't review the first episode like I did with WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but if you look at the view counts for those videos, they're really low, and I thought, you know what? Reviewing the first episode of Loki is just not worth it, especially considering that not a whole lot happens in that first episode alone. But we've made it through this first season. It's all said and done. And if I'm going to be completely honest, out of the 3 MCU Disney Plus shows that we have, this is my least favorite. And I feel like I'm in the minority when it comes to that opinion, because everyone is in love with this show. Some people saying it's the best thing the Marvel Cinematic Universe has produced, which I disagree completely. And let me just tell you right off the bat, let me get the negatives out of the way why this isn't my favorite of the Disney Plus MCU shows. One of the big reasons why I feel about this show the way that I do is that it doesn't really have a conclusive end. More than any other MCU related piece of media, whether it's a movie or a TV show, this is the main one that feels most like a commercial for the future of the series. And I don't really have a problem with that overall, because I love a lot of the other movies that people have criticized for being commercials. But with this particular show, I just didn't feel like it had a really authentic conclusion. Each of the episodes are important to one another, and I'll say right now that none of them feel like filler. But when you get to the big ending of this season, it just feels open-ended. It didn't feel like anything was wrapped up. It just left us with some more questions. And I know a lot of people are very critical on the finale for Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but that finale at least wrapped things up. It felt like a conclusion, even if that show ends up getting a second season. I mean, who knows what will happen with the future of that series. And while Loki is certainly getting a season 2, maybe if I revisit this season after season 2, I'll be like, okay, so that leads to this, and I could give it some slack now, now that I know what's going to happen. But right now, I had some issues with the way this season was structured, and it just didn't really feel that centric to Loki himself. It just felt more like a setup for the multiverse that's going to happen with What If, Doctor Strange, and supposedly Spider-Man No Way Home. But that being said, I don't want you guys to get the impression that I disliked Loki at all, because there's really a lot to admire about this show. For one, Tom Hiddleston is still as great as ever as Loki, and I had my doubts about this show originally when Kevin Feige revealed that it was going to take place after Loki escaped the Avengers in Endgame, because in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, well, you just disregard any further development that Loki has as a character between Thor Ragnarok and his somewhat noble sacrifice in Avengers Infinity War. So when the show started, I just had to come to terms with, okay, this is a different version of Loki. It's much like Gamora in Avengers Endgame. This is not the same character that we have known for the past couple of movies. So I'll just meet it at that level. And what they do with Loki in this particular season, it gives him his own story and makes him more heroic without having to really rely on Thor. Then you have Sophia Di Martino as the female variant of Loki, Sylvia, who is an original character and a cross between Lady Loki and the Enchantress. And when this started, I actually thought she was the Enchantress, but I guess it's going to be a really long time, if ever, that we ever see that character in the MCU. But whatever. This variant of Loki I find to be kind of a neat foil to Tom Hiddleston's Loki. She's definitely kick-ass, she's competent, and her story is somewhat tragic. When you find out her reasons why she hates the TVA and why she just keeps making their job even harder, you kind of get it. And as much as I criticize the finale for kind of feeling open-ended, they do give her somewhat of a conclusion because we ultimately get to the bottom of who's behind it all, which I'll actually talk about right now, because the one who's behind the TVA is He Who Remains. And Jonathan Majors is awesome in this role. And if you follow any of the MCU casting announcements, you know he's going to be in Ant-Man the Wasp: Quantumania as Kang the Conqueror, one of the other big baddies of the Avengers. And He Who Remains is pretty much a variant of Kang the Conqueror. He pretty much is the one who created the TVA in an attempt to contain the multiverse war between his evil variants. And knowing how powerful Kang the Conqueror can be, that's something we can't afford to happen. But Sylvia ends up killing He Who Remains, and thus destroying the sacred timeline, and everything's breaking off into different multiverse branches. And a lot of people have criticized her actions and compared it to what Star-Lord Peter Quill did in Avengers Infinity War, where, wow, you let your own personal feelings get in the way and you screwed everything up for everyone. And I will defend her the same way I defended Peter Quill's actions in Infinity War. Yeah, you did really mess up, but if any one of us were in their situation, we probably would have done the same. Because one of the really great things about Marvel in general is that these characters, despite being half aliens or gods or some other form of extraterrestrial creature, they make them feel very human. Thus, we can relate to them a lot more. So I felt like her actions were very understandable, especially when you consider her backstory. And then you have some other great people in this as well. Owen Wilson is Mobius. Gugu Mbatha-Raw is really good as one of the TVA judges. You have Richard E. Grant as another variant, classic Loki, where he's dressed like Loki in the old comics. You have an alligator Loki, which I wonder how long it'll be before Walt Disney World starts taking all their alligators and just put Loki helmets on them. You have Tara Strong voicing Miss Minutes, who's pretty much the TVA's Mr. DNA. At least that's what I kept thinking of the whole time. Speaking of the TVA, I love the way the headquarters looks. It's got that old retro 1950s feeling to it. And I think the production design for the TVA in general is outstanding. It might be the best the MCU has to offer in terms of production design. And the score is fantastic. It helps lend itself to that 50s look of the TVA. It's just really kick-ass overall. And as much as I criticize the ending for not feeling all that conclusive, especially for Loki's character, it's actually quite a haunting ending. Because, yeah, we got a conclusion for Sylvia, but she just kind of opened this can of worms to an entire multiverse. And that last shot where one of the statues of the TVA has been replaced with Kang the Conqueror is kind of chilling. And if nothing else, it did make me more excited to see what actually happens in Season 2. So overall, I'd say this is a good series, but it's not really that great in my opinion. It's got a lot of really good stuff to it. It definitely left me excited for season 2. And now that the Sacred Timeline has branched off into several multiverses, I can't wait to see the future of what we get in terms of the multiverse, especially with What If coming out in a couple of days. So that's going to be exciting. But this whole season itself, right now, it's just good. Nothing spectacular, but I imagine it'll be enhanced with a season 2. And there you go, that's my review for season 1 of Loki. I hope you enjoyed it. And now I want to know what you guys think about this season. If you've seen it, what did you think? Is this your favorite of the MCU shows on Disney Plus? Whatever the case may be, let me know in the comments below. And until next time, this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there's only one. Hello everyone, I just wanted to say thank you all for watching my review for season 1 of Loki. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell button to get notifications. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, go check out my Twitch channel, and support me on Patreon. I'll see you guys in the next video, but until then, have a good day and take care of yourselves.